And I will introduce myself. My name is Andy Atkins Pogue. I am a librarian at Cosumnes River College, and I am also chair of a district academic senate subcommittee called the District Affordable Educational Materials Committee. Is that correct, Megan?
It's the affordable learning materials.
Affordable learning materials. And Megan is also on that committee. She represents Folsom, and she's going to be kind of monitoring chat, and we're both here to answer any questions that you might have. As we start going through some things, just know that I have two monitors, so I'm going to try to kind of keep an eye on things, but if I'm not looking at the camera, it's because I'm looking at my second monitor. So thank you for spending some time late in the afternoon, and hopefully this will be relatively quick. Before I get into the actual form, I'm going to give you a little bit of background, and then I'll show you what the form looks like. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the form in eServices that allows you to designate your class as zero textbook costs, or if your class, because many of the colleges, I know CRC does, and I think a few others do, have been rolling over this data element from like semester to like semester. So how that works is if a class was designated in spring of 2024 as zero textbook costs, when that class is copied over in PeopleSoft, it brings that designation over. And if it's not the same instructor who is teaching the class, then that designation might be incorrect. So you can also use this form to remove the symbol from your class or to change the way that the class is designated. And the thing that makes this complicated is that there are now, initially when this started, we were required to report to the chancellor's office whether a class was zero textbook costs, and that was it. And so it was relatively easy. Then they changed it and asked us to tell them, if it is zero textbook costs, how did it get there? Meaning, are you using an open educational resource, or did the college buy material for the class, or just no textbook at all? And that was kind of easy because we only had 3 categories. And then the state was allocated a huge chunk of money, and that is going towards colleges to create zero textbook cost degree pathways. And then now they're really trying to figure out how this money is being spent, and they want even more granular detail. Meaning, are you using open educational resources and something that the college purchased? And so there's 5 different definitions for how a class might become zero textbook costs. And those are outlined on the very first question on the FAQ page. And it gives you, for each data element, what that definition is. So that's something that you can refer to down the road. To actually access the form, it is in eServices, and the link that I shared with you for the resources, there's a link that takes you directly to the form. It used to be that you had to click a bunch of tiles and it was kind of hidden. We have a link that goes directly to the form, and that link, it is also can be accessed through the global navigation menu in Canvas. I'm just going to get straight into the form. All of the documents that I've shared with you, there's a Google slideshow and there's a video. Those show you how to access the form. And I'm saying that maybe I have the wrong link in that form because it's supposed to be taking you directly to the form. So it should take you right to the form, which looks like this. I'll double check that link and make sure I have it correct.
As a quick note, I think sometimes if it stops at the login screen, it forgets where it's supposed to go. So if it doesn't take you directly to the form, try logging in and then just click it again, and it should, like it did here, it should go to the form.
Thank you, Megan. This form has 3 separate sections. The first section should have your information, and because you've logged in, you will see your WID and your name. And then the way that you're reporting is you're going to pick the semester that you're reporting in this drop-down menu. So I'm going to pick spring 2025. And now you'll see that information has populated down here. Now they created kind of a fake class for me, so I would be able to demonstrate for you. For other faculty, you should see every course in here for which you are the instructor of record. So you will, if you have 3 sections of the same course, you will see all 3 sections listed in here. And it will have the college, the course name, the title of the course, and the section number. And this is connected to the section that is actually taking the enrollment. So if you have a lecture lab course where you might have one lecture section and multiple labs connected to that lecture, whoever is assigned teaching the lab sections, they're going to see this form. There is a little flaw in the system that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But if you know that you're teaching a class and you've already been assigned to it and you don't see it when you log in here, you should contact your dean because there's some sort of glitch happening. Then down below are definitions of the possible categories that you can choose if you're choosing 0 textbook costs. Mark, I see you have your hand raised.
Really quick, for the first time this term, I was designated a subclass to my class. So they have dual enrollment students, and they put in a block of students from one school in this new class they designated for me. So do I need to designate 0 textbook costs to each section now, or is that available? Or
if you see it listed in here, you should have the ability to designate it.
okay.
That's a unique situation, Mark, that I haven't come across yet, but I would say let's do it and test it. And if we see issues, I'll follow up with you to figure out what might be happening on the back end.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the possible definitions, like I said, there are 5 of them. One is there's no text at all. And probably the best example of this I could give is maybe a physical education course. Maybe it's like a jogging course and there's no text and you don't have your students read or look at any YouTube videos or any material. Basically, they're showing up and you're talking about the benefits of running and you run and that's it. That would be a class that is no text at all. ZTC Open Educational Resources, this means you are all primary materials within the course, meaning your textbook and your homework are all openly available to students for free. And if you're using a homework system, it is a homework system where students do not have to pay for access to it. So if you're using MyOpenMath or something in Adapt, this would qualify for that. ZTC College Supplied, this means either the college has purchased a set of class textbooks so your students don't have to buy them, or you are using an ebook from the college library, or in some cases, some campuses have used 0 textbook cost funds to purchase ebook licenses that are also available through the library. We tried to give a few examples without making this overwhelming in each category. Then we have the example of you're using open educational resources and something that is college supplied. So examples of this are maybe you're using, I'm going to use English writing as an example. You're using an OER textbook for the kind of the nuts and bolts of grammar and critical thinking, but you also want your students to read an ebook that's available through the library, a novel that the college has purchased so that your students have access to it. That's a combination of OER and college supplies. And then the last example is zero textbook cost, but not OER. And these would be things that are freely available to students, but the college hasn't had to purchase them, and they're not necessarily open educational resources. So these could be, if your entire course is material that you have written yourself and you are not publishing it under an open license, and maybe there's some YouTube videos or TED Talks in there. So it's all available to your students for free, but none of it is openly licensed, and students don't have to pay for any of it. Several different categories. Now, we know that this data is already kind of muddy, and it's not going to be 100% accurate. So we ask you to just kind of decide what is the best definition for you, and then you can pick that designation through this drop-down menu. For those of you who know you're using a commercial textbook or a commercial homework system that students have to pay to access, and the symbol has showed up on the class schedule, you can come in here and select my textbook is not free, and you would submit that, and it would remove the symbol from the class schedule. Now, if you need some further help to try to figure out what am I supposed to pick, you can use the link that's in the third column, which is a questionnaire that gives you a series of questions to help you come up with the correct designation. So these are yes or no questions, and it's just a decision tree that's kind of trying to figure out what is best. And once you have filled out the form, you click done in the upper right-hand corner, and it should populate this drop-down menu for you. And you can continue, if you do that and you think, oh, that's not right, I know that's not right. You can keep answering these questions, and it will pick the designation for you. So when you hit done, now it has changed it here in this drop-down menu. So to actually submit the form, you scroll down to the bottom and click submit. And then you should receive a message that lets you know that it was submitted successfully. And because this is behind the scenes in PeopleSoft, it will push through to the online class schedule where anybody can view it online. And that I've noticed it takes usually about 15 minutes. It should happen in near real time on the back end in PeopleSoft where students are registering for classes. So on the back end where students are registering, they can choose filters that show them which courses have zero textbook costs. And we know from some of the research that we've done that students are learning about this and they are choosing these classes, and it is helping to boost enrollment to find the classes that do not have textbook costs associated with them. The reason that we are collecting this data is that it's a requirement from the state chancellor's office. It's called an MIS data element, and this allows us to gather as accurate as possible information and then push that on through to the state chancellor's office. So that is the actual form. I'm gonna stop sharing and then just pause and see if anybody has any questions. Okay. I mentioned earlier that data is rolling over from like semester to like semester. So we just were able to make the changes behind the scenes on the different data elements this spring. So that means anything that has rolled over from last spring is likely doesn't have the correct Antonio, yes, it will. Anything that was rolled over from last spring likely doesn't have the correct designation. So we're asking all faculty just to kind of go in there and pick what they think is most accurate. What we did do, because everything that was listed as an open educational resource only was listed as a B before, and that element went away completely. So we did have the IT department do a manual update and just change everything that was a B to the new designation for OER, which is an E. You don't need to know about these letters, but just know that we did do that so that the symbol would push through to the class schedule because the B went away completely. But there's a real high chance that maybe you aren't just using OER, maybe you are using some other materials. So we're asking that you kind of just check it out and see what your designation is and make updates. I'm going to just say a few more things and then I'll answer your question, okay? The other thing I wanted to let you know is that you can continue to make changes to this form. So I know schedule shifts are still happening. If a class is removed from your schedule and things are changing, you can go in and continue to make changes to this form up until the census date. And we can also make manual updates on the back end. It's just more work for the instruction office. So sometimes I will see a class that I know is zero textbook costs. I've worked with the faculty member before. I've asked them to fill out the form, but maybe they haven't seen that email. And so sometimes I will actually send an email to our instruction office and say, hey, can you change the attribute for this? I know all colleges do their processes slightly differently, but know that manual updates can be made as well. Okay, Lorinda, do you still have a question?
Well, I was at the point of trying to figure out where in self-services the form was because I missed your click to get to the actual form. I did find that there. And then I'm looking at the drop down. So it looks like on the page, it provides all the information that I need.
We're hoping it does.
Well, I've written all of my own content.
Okay.
I have not published an OER. I'm not putting it out there for the world to use. And it looks like the option I would pick would be ZTC, no OER.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. And so that's the other thing. We made all of these changes. We tried to get input from as many faculty as we could. We had kind of a sandbox that we were working in. And so we were trying to make this as easy as possible. We know it is an added step for faculty, but we also know that with any process, there's likely going to be some hiccups. So at each college, we have representatives, and I will add those names to that Google Doc that we shared, so you know who to reach out to if you run into problems, and we can work on getting things figured out. I'm going to share my screen one more time and just show you in Canvas how to access the form. It's in the global navigation help menu. So if you're on your dashboard, it's white. And then once you get into a class, that global navigation bar is going to change colors depending on your campus. It's branded differently, but it's this one in the far left column. You'll click the help menu, and if you scroll down, these are in alphabetical order, so we're assuming that it's always going to be at the bottom of that list. And when you click that, it should take you directly to the form.
Thank you.
I'll look at my notes. Okay, I mentioned that there was a slight glitch in the system that we know is a problem, and the developers have not been able to correct it. And that is when we have multiple labs attached to a single lecture. So this typically happens in science, although it happens in some art classes as well. And at CRC, I kind of keep a running list of those instances. And what happens is faculty have the ability to submit the form, but the symbol does not push through onto the class schedule for whatever reason. We're not sure why. But we can make a manual update and make sure that the symbol gets put onto the course. So I try to keep an eye on those at CRC, and I think other colleges are also, that's on our radar. But if you are teaching one of those classes where you have one lecture but multiple labs attached to it, if you notice that the symbol is not on your class and it should be, I would encourage you to reach out to your representative, and we can make sure that change happens. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to tell you about as far as the e-form and the data element and why it's required. And then there's some FAQs, other FAQs on each individual campus page. Catherine.
Hi there. I'm just wondering, you said contact your representative. Would that be the librarian that's associated with your area? Who would that, if you're not, I'm at City College.
We are part of a district-wide committee that's a subcommittee of the District Academic Senate. So for the person from Sac City who is on that committee is Rebecca Goodchild, and also Andre. Yeah, hi, Rebecca. Who is in math, and his last name is Bezos, I think. He's also on that committee. And
yes, it is.
Hey, Andre, thank you both for being here. So
Thank you.
on the Google sheet or Google Doc that we share that has links to this stuff, I'll go in there and make sure the proper, for each college, the names are listed so you know who to contact. Okay, any other questions about XB12 and the data element and zero textbook costs and the symbol?
I went to the site and it's not listing all my classes. So it lists that weird component class, but doesn't list the main class.
Okay, Mark. So let's connect. I will look at the online class schedule and see the classes that you are that you're assigned to, and then I might circle back with Bonnie, your dean, and then we'll figure out what's happening on the back end. But all of your classes are ZTC, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
OER and college supply.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Hanku?
Yeah, my question is, does hidden costs include like calculator or Scantron, those things too, or?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, and that's a nice segue into our next topic, which is transparency in course fees.
Okay.
So for textbook costs,
Yeah.
the official definition is textbook, homework system, lab manual. If there are other things that you require for your course that are required but aren't necessarily that instructional type material, you can still list your class as zero textbook cost because that falls under that textbook definition. But there is a new state law, it's AB 607, that requires us to be transparent in all of the costs that a student might incur in taking your class. So if you require them to purchase a calculator or have access to a calculator, or you require them for a science class to have gloves or a lab coat, or an art class, if you require them to have art supplies, paper, or paints, you can still require those to be successful in the course, but and mark the class as zero textbook costs if the definition of your textbook falls under all of the definitions that we talked about. But the law is asking us to be transparent so that students know what kind of fees they're facing before they have to register for classes. So within our committee, we already have been doing this through the college bookstore for a lot of things. And the alternate way to do it is through a note in the section notes. So one of the documents that is listed under the AB 607 is a slideshow that Sarah Lehman at American River College, who's the representative on the district-wide committee, created to help walk faculty through this aspect of it. And I'll share my screen and just kind of go through. I'm not going to go through the whole slideshow, but I'll just let you know there's two ways that you can report this material. You can report it through the college bookstore if they have access to supplies that you need, and they can typically find the science supplies like gloves and lab coats and goggles and slides. They can supply those, calculators, and they also have a vendor that does art supplies. So you can submit those through the college bookstore, and this slideshow kind of walks you through that process. You create a detailed list, you send it off to, and there's an art vendor that they use, so you would need to pick supplies from that particular vendor. Then you would communicate with the materials manager through Follett, who is the manager for the entire district, and her name is Rachel, and her email address is there. And she recommends that you actually put recommended into the bookstore designation so that you can explain to students on the first day of class that they can certainly buy those materials through the college bookstore, but they might be able to find them less expensive through another vendor. And if you decide that you don't really want to list things through the college bookstore, another option would be to put a note in the class schedule. And so we've given you a couple examples of what those notes might look like. And this is a section note in the class schedule, which lets students know you are required to buy this material for this course, and this is the estimated cost that you could expect to pay for these materials. And this slideshow at the end, it has some other resources. I wanted to just, let me stop this share. And I'm going to show you, let me open these up. I'm sorry, I'm probably going to pronounce your name incorrectly. Is it Heike?
Hi, it's Heike, and
Okay.
I just wrote in the chat that I have several questions about art supplies, so I'm not sure if I should wait till the end, or because I'm sure there are many people here that that this doesn't pertain to, so I don't want to take up people's time.
Okay, let me just go through these two things real quickly, and then I'm basically done, so we can open it up for questions.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to just show you a couple examples, and the deal with this particular legislation, I think the requirement for January 2025 is that we have like 45% compliance, and I think all colleges are on top of that. So this is really kind of an introduction to faculty so that we can just try to do better as we move forward and make sure that we're being as transparent as possible with students. So the first example I'm going to show you, this is a theater arts course. And this is one of my colleagues here at CRC, and she has already done a nice job. And in this note here, she talks about including required attendance of theater productions. So what she would need to do is just to modify this note just a little bit that says something like, these could cost anywhere between $10 and $100, depending on what you choose, and I will provide a list of possible performances that you can attend. Just so we can be as transparent as possible and let students know what they can anticipate they might be spending.
Andy, I think that's just a description of the class. I think the class note is further down usually. Like if there is a class note, I think it's in the section details area.
Okay. Let me just. Okay, so here's an example of the note that we're talking about. And this is a very large note, but in this note, I'm not going to be able to find it right now. But there is something in here that says students need to buy the required uniform for this particular cohort. And so that is a really great start. What we need to do is just add to that says this will cost anywhere between this much and this much, so that students know exactly how much they're facing as they are enrolling in the course. And then this is an example of what it looks like. So you'll see that this course is zero textbook cost. He uses OER for the textbook and a lab manual that was created within the department that is free to students. But this class requires students to buy gloves. And so they can pick either small, medium, or large, and they have an option here to buy it through the bookstore. And this does say required, so students know they have to have gloves. But I know that Eric on the first day of class says, you don't have to buy them through the bookstore. You could buy them at Costco if that's going to work better for you. But this is telling students that there are additional costs associated with the course, and now they know how much they can anticipate to spend.
I mean, how can we put the note on the class schedule? Individual faculty can do it, or?
You're gonna have to work with your dean and with the instruction office. So I know every campus does this slightly differently, but typically there's a spreadsheet that you all are working from that lists the courses and the sections and who's teaching what. And at CRC, there should be an area where you can adjust the class note. And then that gets pushed on to the instruction office and they need to make those changes.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk art supplies.
Okay, hi, thank you. So you addressed some of this already. That's why I sort of was raising my hand right then and there. So the slide for adding art supplies said that we can look at this McPherson catalog, the distributor, art supply distributor. I've done this before, and it's an inordinate amount of time that it takes to do that. And it was a bit of a nightmare to do that when this was at the beginning of COVID, when Rachel, I also was new, so it was really, really frustrating. And I sort of gave up on that, and I'm working now with Blick Art they provide a service where they have kits that of course, it also takes time to go through their catalog, and I work with, so I'm already spending that time, basically, I already spent that time for the course, not for all courses, but for certain courses, especially when they're beginning general ed and students have no clue about art supplies. So can I and they have a really great price and at a reduced rate. Of course, that may be misleading. Can I just add a class note then, which I think you already answered in so many words, but I'm just verifying, saying it costs about $85. Of course, that's provided if they buy it there, because if they buy it anywhere else, they're not going to get that huge discount, right? So, I don't know. I mean, I can talk about that in the class. I email students ahead of time. I email them the flyer ahead of time. But in terms of having it ready the semester before for the zero, for this class schedule notation, is that sufficient to list just a price there? Okay. I mean, I could
Absolutely.
still,
And then just, you're already communicating with your students, so you can just let them know in those communications. I'll provide you a detailed list of what's needed and potential vendors.
and of course, the other question would, and thank you. And of course, the other question would be, can I just email Rachel a list of the supplies? Because there are a lot, it's not just a pad of paper and some pencils, right? For any given art class, it's a lot more. So
Yeah, and I think her ask is that you like are providing her with specific, like, detailed codes if you're using the McPherson catalog, so that make sure she understands exactly what you're asking for. And I know that they can kind of create these art kits as well, but I'm going to be perfectly honest and transparent that Rachel is trying to manage all 4 colleges, and it's a lot, and she's getting a lot of emails, and I've heard from others that often there's been a really slow response time. So it might be something that you kind of work on, and then it's already in place, and maybe you send it to her in the middle of the semester for the following semester, but rely on those course notes until you can do that. Or
okay.
if you find that the course note is just an easier way to go and is more beneficial to students,
Yeah.
I honestly would do that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we broke something that worked. We had a really great art supply buyer at our bookstore before this became Follett. So, and it's
Yeah.
still a bit of a, anyway, but that's water under the bridge or whatever you say. Thank you.
And I honestly don't know what's going to happen with Follett. Their contract is up, I think, at the end of this year, maybe next year. So there's a possibility that we might get a different vendor. I know they're particularly frustrated with CRC because we require very few textbooks that need to be purchased now. So there's just not a lot of inventory. So I don't know what it looks like going forward, but that's
thank
who
you.
we have to work with right now.
Yeah, I know. I understand. Thank you so much.
There's a question in the chat. Does this transparency issue apply only to those items that students must purchase on their own versus monies that have paid for via lab fees? Correct. But if there is a lab fee, that also you want to be transparent about that. And I know, like, the EMT classes or other classes have said there's a $100 lab fee or $50 lab fee. As long as you're being transparent with that, you don't have to be detailed on what is being purchased with that lab fee.
So we're getting some questions about things like calculators and stuff. So I would just say it's kind of across the board. If there's like specific things that you require, right? Like they have to specifically use this kind of thing, I would list it, right? So for instance, for calculators, if it has to be a graphing calculator particularly, then I would list it. If it's just a scientific calculator, but they cannot use their phone, I would list it, right? Like if they're allowed to just use their phone as a calculator, then okay, they probably can do that. They can go on a website, there's calculators online. But if you need them to physically bring a device in person, then that is something that if they don't already have, they're going to have to purchase for your class. So the idea is just to make sure that students are prepared for what they're going to need to bring to your class in particular.
Other questions? Okay. Does everybody have the links that they need for resources and submitting that you were here today? Okay. Hanku, did you
Yeah.
have one other question?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't put a note for this semester, but can I do it next semester or is
Yeah,
it mandatory? Yeah,
Yeah, I know we're in the thick of it and y'all are trying to get ready for next week and you're thinking, oh my gosh, they're putting one other thing. on the plate.
Yeah.
If you just kind of keep this in the back of your mind
Yeah,
and try to
right.
do it going forward,
Yeah,
that's our biggest ask. And I think we'll
Yeah.
continue to remind you of this requirement and to try to be as transparent as possible.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. I will add these email addresses into that Google Doc. Feel free to share that within your departments. And that's it. I'm going to stop the recording. I will stick around if there's anybody that has questions they don't feel comfortable asking.